Yeah. So the thing is, a lot of my friends who were seeing that first year's work would compare it with either Pather Pachali or Charulata because of the house and things like that, or then they would say Sanjay Leela Bansali's Devdas, which I think came out around that time, 99, 2000, whatever. So I don't think I was very enthused by the Devdas connect. In fact, I was very irritable when I could hear it because it told me that, again, they had no sense of the social modes. Because what that means is that, say, my mother or my aunts would dance in the Thakurdala with villagers. There's nothing wrong in it, but I'm saying it doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? So I think it told me that where their appreciation was coming from was a slightly misinformed place. So these pictures were, so that Excel sheet idea came about because since people kept saying Pather Pachali, I thought I should watch the film, and I had never seen it before. So those were the days of VCDs, and I managed to track down a VCD and I tried to watch it, and I was just bored out of my skull. Bored, okay? But then people kept saying like Pather Pachali, and I said, okay, dekhte hain fir se, and I think slowly, since then, I've probably watched the film about 30 odd times. Okay, I know the dialogues, I know sequences. I mean, it's happened. It's a bit like Godfather for me. I can tell you the dialogues. So Pather Pachali became like that, and I think that magic of the film, or like any good education, it starts doing things for you which you don't realize at that point. But I think something starts to happen. So what it did was it opened up the world of Satyajit Ray for me. And I figured that Satyajit, what very good thing about Ray was that he was an incredibly articulate man. Okay, and I love people who are articulate because you wish this was the teacher I had, but obviously you didn't. So whatever he had written, his essays, his writings on films, you watch his films, his interviews, things like that, and slowly, you started to figure how a narrative needs to be crafted, because that's what he's doing, right? You also start realizing, because through his films, I began to understand what it meant to be a Bengali. Okay, which in Bombay I wasn't, in an odd way, obviously. But I think it kind of connected me to a certain kind of way of life and a medium. One of the things that I started to understand through his writings was, how he would make detailed notes while he was planning all his films. If you just go online, there are kind of tons of material that you can read about, Ray's notebooks and things like that. Some of them are even available now in printed form. It also kind of taught me about logic and things like that. While I was reading Ray, there were other filmmakers that I was suddenly becoming aware of, like say Alfred Hitchcock. I'm a huge Hitchcock fan. Kurosawa, okay? I was suddenly beginning to watch their films, okay? Again on VCDs and things like that, and then later DVDs. And I think a parallel education was happening, okay? You realized through Hitchcock, there's a very famous book by Hitchcock, but Hitchcock is interviewed by Truffaut, the French filmmaker, where he they interview each other and they're dissecting each and every film of Hitchcock, okay, from his silent films to you. And what you again realize is the logic behind how a narrative is crafted. It's not it's none of that. It's actually kind of pure logic, okay? What are you trying to communicate and how do you go about doing that, right? So, the Excel sheet idea came from there. I could draw as a kid, but I think as I became a photographer, I found that I started losing proficiency to draw. So unlike Ray, who could make these storyboards, I wasn't doing storyboards. I did the next lazy next best thing, which was create that Excel sheet. I'll show you the Excel sheets at a later thing. So you see it's left page, right page, and it's in lot of detail. So that Excel sheet over the first 3 years was getting fine-tuned. Okay? So, these opening sequences, as you see, are actually mentioned in the Excel sheet. Though not in very much of detail, but you know, it says in the beginning, village scene, or that temple, that terracotta temple near so-and-so pond. There's details like that. Now you're kind of then waiting. Obviously, I couldn't write there, I need a buffalo on the left. Those were lucky things that happened, but those are things you start realizing that you will get that only if you go early in the mornings. Okay, you can't go there in the afternoon and get that. These are things that you start. That's the wisdom that you gather as you start spending time there. What you also start to realize is, what should I be shooting? Okay, because just as much as it's important to, you can fall in love with a photograph, right? I mean, we were discussing earlier that it's easy for a photographer to fall in love with their own work. But you also have to be very dispassionate and say, no. If I can tell this story in 100 photos, why is there 101st there? You might love it, knock it off. Right? I mean, so it's that. So how are you kind of plotting each of these? So these first 4 or 5 pictures are essentially kind of easing you into the village life. You know, the slow rhythms of village life. One of the things that I also found out gradually as I was reading Ray was, he talks about when he was planning Pather Panchali, when he was actually shooting Pather Panchali, he talks about how he realizes that nothing much happens in an Indian, in a Bengali village, in the sense that life is really slow. Okay? Now, if you think about it, if life is really slow, life is very quiet. See, in any story, like we were saying, there are characters, right? One of the, and this was a great moment of realization for me. I remember one day sitting in one, behind our house near one of those ponds with my cousins, and we were hiding from our elders and we were having a smoke. And there was a little fish, okay, which jumped out of the water and just jumped right back in and made that sound. Now this is a sound that you will never hear in Bombay. Chance ही नहीं है कि आपको सुनने में, but गांव में वो सुनने में आया. It was kind of like the clarity of that sound, and I think what it told me was that this aspect of silence has to be a very important character of the story. Whenever, if you are into reading, you would realize that there's something very important which all writers will talk about, which is tone of voice. Okay, Madhavan would probably use tone of voice. Okay, meaning, what is Gabbar Singh's character like? Okay, what is Sanjeev Kumar's character like? They're not both talking in the same way. दोनों का मतलब एक में थोड़ा ठहराव है, दूसरे में थोड़ा boisterous है. That tone of voice. So think about it. If you are telling a story of Bombay and you are telling a story of, say, a village in Bengal, Bombay would by default be kind of a noisy. The way you shoot it would be different, right? And the way you shoot this place has to be different. I don't know if this has been evident for you all when you saw the work, but you will realize that it's only at the end where a wide angle has been used. Because what the wide angle does is it will distort, it will do all, meaning it's kind of asking for attention. Now if you're asking for attention means you're not wanting to be quiet. You understand what I'm saying? So the way that it is shot, this whole thing, you will see there is a kind of, the kind of focal length that has been chosen, or even the kind of distance, even the kind of framing that it is to that effect. Yeah? Now you are slowly entering the house and the environs of the house. Okay, so every year before the thing, the house gets a little coat of paint, all that. So this is the entrance of the Thakur. Okay, the traditional, the guys who come, you all may have gone to Kolkata, gone to Kumotuli and shot idols being made, or gone to paint here and shot Ganpati being made and whatever. In our family, the guy who comes to make the idol has been coming for generations. Okay, the idol is absolutely the same. Nothing changes. Or so my uncles and all tell me like what they remember as a child and what we are seeing now. Nothing has changed. Now, if you think about it, I mean, when we are, this is again something about magazine design and design in general. See, as photographers, very often we are only thinking of the image, right? The image shoot karna. Now, if you think about it as impact, if you go to museums, you will see in a lot of good museums, or if you see photographs of museums abroad, you will see like these very large canvases. और सामने एक छोटा सा बेंच हो, ओके, जहाँ पे कोई बैठ के वो दूर का वो कैनवस देख रहा है. Have you ever wondered why that bench is there? There's actually a science about images, okay, and how images are viewed. This was something, since he brought up Life magazine, this is something which Life actually used. This same science, it kind of used it very brilliantly. Life was a large size magazine, right? So the science is that large canvas, the diagonal of that is half the ideal viewing distance. Okay? So if now there are obviously riders to it, which happen largely in the case of photography. So what happens is, now imagine it's a large canvas with 100 people. Okay, अगर आप इतना नजदीक से देखोगे आपको कुछ दिखेगा ही नहीं. वो देखने के लिए आपको पीछे जाए. So that's the mathematics which is being done. So what Life magazine did, the ideal Life magazine reader would see the magazine like that. Okay, because then they can see those large